possibilities and competencies and what we are doing in the STARS EU Alliance when it comes to knowledge creation and to activities and research. So this is to show each other, but also to show students and outsiders about what we are doing and what we are capable and what we have competence in inside the alliance of STARS EU. And if there are no questions or any initial remarks, I would like to give Professor Couto the floor to present her studies and her interest findings about the SDG 16 at local level, enforcing consumer rights. So very welcome, Professor Couto, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I hope the sound is okay. The presentation is in presentation mode. I would like to thank the STARS EU Talks organization. And I hope that we can have an interesting talk about the enforcing consumer rights, implementing SDG 16 at local level. As you all know, the 2030 agenda, she defines a common vision for humanity, a social contract between world leaders and the people, and basically a list of things to do on behalf of the people and the planet. It was approved by all the United Nations member states in 2015, and it defines some global sustainable development priorities and aspirations to achieve by 2030, and seeks to mobilize global efforts around a common set of goals, 17 goals, and targets. Each one of the goals has multiple targets to be achieved by 2030. These are the 5 principles, the 5 P's of sustainability, as used to say, the 5 big principles: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. So in people, to ensure dignity and equality for everybody, and poverty and hunger in all their forms. Planet, protect the planet, natural resources and climate to support the needs of the present and future generations. Prosperity, to ensure prosperous and fulfilling lives in harmony with nature, to foster peace, peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, and also to implement this agenda through a revitalized global partnership. As all global challenges, it's harder to do like that, of course, but it's essential. It only works, this kind of agenda only works if all of us are committed to these 5 principles. And this decade we are living in, 2020-2013, has been declared the decade of action. The ambition, the sense of urgency to accelerate this green transitional, digital transition, to assure that our kind of development in all countries in the world is a sustainable one at multiple levels. And the motto of all this agenda is leaving no one behind. So we can only achieve these global objectives if locally and individually they are also achieved with this kind of urgency, because we have really, humanity has no time to lose regarding the implementation of such agenda, of course. So 17 global SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. I think most of you know them already. We have been working on them for some years now in our academic institutions, our local institutions, etc. Today we are focusing on the 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. I'm a law teacher, and all my research is dedicated mainly to consumer issues, also the digital transition. So this was the SDGs that motivated me more to investigate and to keep working on it. There is a ranking of how countries are getting there. We have still 5 years to go to the 2030 agenda. So Portugal is now in the 16th place, which is a cute coincidence because we are talking about SDG 16. And also this SDG has been highlighted from the European Commission as one of the 6 priorities included in the European way of life, and this justice, peace, and strong institutions, and European democracy mode as well. Each goal has a lot of targets. Some of these targets are not related directly with consumer issues, of course. We are focusing mainly on target 3, promote the rule of law and ensure equal access to justice. Also target 7, ensure responsive, inclusive, and representative decision-making. And target 8, strengthen the participation in global governance. But the main objective of this SDG is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies, provide access to justice, and this is one of the main points of my sharing today with you, and also build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And now, today, we are focusing on local institutions and how can they contribute to this global agenda in each municipality. How all of this relates with consumer issues regarding SDG 16. I want to highlight 6 points. The first point is transparency and access to information. So SDG, this goal is all about institutional transparency, inclusive institutions, just institutions. And this goal of promoting access to information is directly linked to the right of consumers to be adequately informed. So clear and accessible disclosure of information is essential to protect consumer rights, enabling informed decision-making. A consumer only can make good decisions, sustainable decisions, critical decisions if he has 2 main aspects: information and freedom. So whenever a consumer has all access to all needed information, and usually consumer contracts are a bit unbalanced regarding information, because usually the consumer is the weaker link of these kind of contracts and legal relationships. So it's important that we can balance this asymmetry in information to enable consumers to make informed decisions. One second aspect highlighted by SDG 16 is the access to justice. So how can we promote peaceful conflict resolution? So promoting accessible, affordable, and efficient consumer dispute resolution mechanisms, which allow disputes between consumers and traders to be resolved fairly and quickly. We can't avoid disputes in general in life. Whenever there's a human, there are conflicts. It's our nature. But the main focus here is to ensure that this kind of disputes, consumer disputes, can be resolved in a fair way. Besides, usually consumers, and that's also a statistic evidence, they don't usually they don't react to consumer problems, the problem itself, the phone that isn't working, the machine that is broken, etc. Usually they get angrier with the way they are treated, the way these kind of consumer disputes are resolved. So this is important to assure in this SDG. It's all about peaceful conflict resolution. Also, one third point is strengthening local institutions, effective institutions. And municipalities play a key role in implementing consumer protection policies, promoting good governance practices at local level. I will talk a little more about this further on. Another important aspect is to enhance civic participation and empowerment. so that we can have those kind of decision-making processes which are inclusive, and the vulnerable people, which I'm going to talk after this, it's one of the worries of this agenda. So how can we empower consumers through educational campaigns, platforms that allow them to actively assert their rights, so they know they can be critic about the consumer issues, the consumer mechanisms that they can use, where should they address, they should address when they have this kind of problems. So this kind of empowerment is also one of the aspects highlighted by SDG 16, this participation, civic participation, and this also one of the points I'd like to highlight as well. The protection of vulnerable groups. SDG says justice and access to justice for all. So we have to include and have to protect everybody, especially the most vulnerable ones and the most vulnerable consumers, which means children. Children are very vulnerable as consumers because they are still working on their personal individual growing process, so they can't understand all kind of marketing mechanisms. For instance, we have a lot of interesting studies about children, for instance, regarding online gaming, the impact of advertising, etc. The elderly people are very vulnerable in some consumer markets in particular, especially when they are elder and also live in remote areas, which make them even more vulnerable to certain commercial practices which are unfair. People with disabilities, physical or psychological disabilities, low literacy populations, etc. So we have to ensure that all these kind of vulnerable consumers have easier access to information and means of resolving their conflicts as well. And on the top of all this, we have to try to promote ethical business practices. These responsible institutions, it's also the urgency to companies and traders to adopt fair consumer practices in compliance with regulations, and that is the key to creating transparent markets and a healthy economic environment. So, and what we are talking today is how can local institutions make the bridge between consumers and traders and companies, which is a relationship, a legal relationship, and the contract very unbalanced. How can local institutions contribute to nivellate this playground between consumers and companies, which is also an important aspect, I think. The European Consumer Agenda 2020-2025 also is in line with this 2030 agenda. It was an agenda set after COVID-19. It was all about strengthening consumer resilience for sustainable recovery after the pandemic. And the main focus of this agenda is to empower European consumers to play an active role in the green and digital transition, not only to assist this kind of phenomenon, but have an active role, a critic role, a conscience role, etc. The agenda sets 5 priority areas: green transition, digital transformation, redress and enforcement of consumer rights, the specific needs of certain consumer groups, the most vulnerable, and also international cooperation. Here in IPB, especially in the Mirandela campus where I teach, we have each year a seminar on consumer rights and consumer law. And we have been, since 2020, dedicating each year to one of these priority areas. So this year is about international cooperation. So it's kind of interesting that we are having this star talks weeks before our seminar, because it's kind of the closure of this consumer agenda 2020-2025. Focusing on 2 of these aspects of this agenda: the effective enforcement and redress, ensuring that all consumers fully benefit from their rights. I'm also in STARS EU in TIG of inclusion and social justice. So these aspects of embracing and welcoming the worries of all consumers is an important issue. and also consumer vulnerability to strengthen consumer awareness, addressing the needs of these different groups. And at some point of the agenda, and the European Commission highlights that addressing these specific consumer needs includes supporting initiatives that provide local advice to consumers who, for structural or personal reasons, do not have access to support and information provided online or at central information offices, including in remote areas. And this is in this our STARS EU Alliance, these kind of difficulties in some geographic exclusion, if we can say it like that, are most evident in consumer issues, because consumers in the big city centers, they have access to some information and some mechanisms that sometimes consumers that does not have that kind of information due to geographical aspects or due to their own individual circumstances, for instance, the children, the elderly, the disabled people. It's important to have these proximity structures providing this kind of local support to consumers. The European Committee of the Regions is the advisory body representing Europe's regional and local authorities, also had an opinion on this consumer agenda, and it emphasizes the importance of involving local and regional authorities in consumer protection policies, especially in some aspects. Information spreading about products, unsafe products, consumer rights, etc. Consumer education, monitoring compliance with consumer rights, developing consumers' digital and financial literacy, and also some mechanisms for debt counseling, which is in the middle of economic crisis, is very important. And the Committee of the Regions recommends addressing all aspects of consumer vulnerability and exclusion, including those that directly concern local issues, such as the digital divide experienced by consumers in unconnected, underconnected, or poorly connected areas, which is still a reality. Sometimes we forget about that, but there are still a lot of consumers that are far away from. Now everything is electronic. When a consumer has an issue with a company, with a provider, here in Portugal at least, sometimes they can't find a phone, an email to contact the company. It's all about chat bots and online platforms, which is a real challenge for some consumers. And these kind of consumers, we should worry more about them and not less. Sometimes it looks like it. And here I like to pass this kind of global challenges, of course, but it's important, the SDG localization. How can we transform these global development goals into reality at the local level, in line with the community's priorities? So this SDG localization is the process of translating this 2030 agenda within the local context, the local challenges, defining, implementing, and monitoring local actions and strategies that contribute to the local achievement of the SDGs. Because it is estimated that 65% of these 169 targets set for the 2030 agenda will not be achieved without the concrete involvement of regional and local governments. And this is a two-way process, from global to local, top-down, because the SDGs frame and guide these local development policies, and from the bottom up, from local to global, as local governments contribute to the achievement of the SDGs through their policies and their actions. It's a two-way process, and it's really leaving no one behind, because we can't work on these kind of global goals alone. No. This is a guide in Portugal, Rumo 2030, it's towards 2030, which is presented as a guide of local action for global transformation. And there are some recommendations. How can municipalities implement this agenda? They have to get political support, involve all municipal departments and create multidisciplinary teams, integrate the SDGs into daily work, day-to-day management, and consumer, we used to call it the day-to-day law, branch of law, because we are all consumers, and every day we celebrate consumer contracts every day. So it's a kind of a good law branch to work on these thematics. Take advantage of existing participation mechanisms to involve local actors. Invest in disaggregated statistical data that allows monitoring and promote the sharing of knowledges and experiences between municipalities through participation in networks and decentralized cooperation. This kind of event we're having here is also an opportunity to share our experiences. I will share the Portuguese one, and then after, at the end, if we have the time, I would also like to know about experiences in your own countries and your own municipalities. The phases to implement the agenda is, first of all, to raise awareness, then to adapt these kind of global goals to municipal context, to implement the measures in each municipality, and then to have some kind of monitorization and to change what needs to be changed, share the good practices, etc., which is also one of the goal, the objectives, the aims of this talk. In Portugal, we have two monitoring mechanisms. One is the Municipal Sustainability Index, which measures the degree of sustainability in each municipality in the country, assessing how the sustainable development is going. And another platform is the local SDG, which is to, it has a set of progress indicators, and it's also the opportunity to map good municipal practices. So each municipality places in this platform what they are doing, good practices, events, all kind of measures. And also we have a lot of progress indicators, goal by goal, target by target, that we can see where the municipality is at, what can be done, how can we copy or inspire in other practices from other municipalities to implement in my own. So it's a very interesting platform. Because municipalities, regarding consumer rights are fundamental rights. They are in the European Chart of Fundamental Rights, consumer rights. They're also in Portuguese constitution, and I imagine in your country's constitutions as well. So they are fundamental rights, fundamental citizen rights. And also the legal framework, the Consumer Protection Acts, assigns local authorities responsibilities in terms of consumer education, consumer information, and the promotion of accessible and prompt justice mechanisms. So this everything to do with SDG 16. In Portugal, our Consumer Protection Act is from 1996. And also from then, it has this kind of functions attributed to municipalities regarding consumer protection, not yet being implemented as they should. And this goal of achieving effective and inclusive institutions also includes adjusting municipal services to local needs and support citizens in exercising their rights, particularly in vulnerability and exclusion situations. So municipalities play an essential role in this agenda due to the proximity that only local power can provide. And this is important mainly in these three big areas of actuation from the municipalities. First one is empowerment. We have to empower consumers, give them information, give them the tools so they can use it in exercising their rights. This is one main aspect. Consumers, we have a lot of information today, but sometimes we have too much information, too technical information, too technical, complex, and it's a overwhelming world of information. So too much information is not necessarily good. So we have to work on making this kind of information user-friendly, consumer-friendly, so they can use it, understand it, and apply that information in their daily-to-daily decisions. When we get online in every terms and conditions, every platforms, we say, accept the terms, accept the terms, accept the terms. We don't read them, we don't understand them. It takes too much to read, even if we wanted to read. So one of the main aspects is this kind of empowerment. How can I have access to clear information that I can really use? One other aspect, especially problematic in Portugal, is the enforcement. We have a lot of consumer laws, which are the same in all European Union countries. But here in Portugal, sometimes the problem is not the laws, is not the law in the books, but the law in action. So the enforcement of these rules in day-to-day life of consumers, how companies comply with these kind of rules, how authorities monitor and sanction, if it's the case, companies that don't comply with these rules, etc. So the enforcement is a big issue. And also the redress. When a consumer is undressed of his or her rights, how can we dress him again? How can we give him mechanisms to solve their conflicts and to have their rights reassured, and contract cancellation, some kind of money they need to have, the problem solving in general. So these three aspects are very, very important. Regarding the experience in Portugal that I would like to share. We have in our Consumer Act, Protection Act, since 1996, we have the obligations that all municipalities contribute to consumer information through municipal consumer information services. And so we have a network. There's a map of Portugal, for those who don't know, where we have this kind of municipal information services, which we call in Portuguese Centros de Informação Autárquicos ao Consumidor. Centers Information Municipal Consumer, our CIACs. That's the name over there. They are an initiative of local authorities with the support of the Director General for Consumers, free of charge for residents. It's a municipal information service, so mainly provides information and advice on all consumer issues, but they also can have some kind of informal mediation of consumer disputes. They can contribute to disseminate warnings about dangerous products or unfair commercial practices, etc. But from our experience, we have two problems. We have 308 municipalities and only 24% have this kind of information services. And as you can see from the map, which is natural, of course, but they are mostly concentrated in the big city areas, Lisbon, Porto, etc. So the inland regions, as the example of the district here, they have not yet these kind of mechanisms so implemented. They have fewer consumers, of course, and sometimes other priorities, and we have still a lot of country to cover with this kind of CIAC network. No? And also, CIACs don't work the same. Some of them have really insufficient technical, human, and financial resources to develop their action. This is one aspect, this kind of information services. Another aspect is about consumer alternative dispute resolution, consumer ADR. We have a consumer arbitration network. also free of charge or at reduced cost. HAL is in Portuguese, ADR or HAL. Through out-of-court procedures like mediation, conciliation, and arbitration. I was in arbitration of consumer disputes for 2 years here in Porto, where I live. And now we are trying to develop this kind of mechanisms here in the region as well. It's a voluntary mechanism, of course, out-of-court procedures. I don't know if it's the same in your countries, but we can discuss it in the end. So the problem we had some years ago was that companies didn't want to go to this kind of means, out-of-court procedures, forcing consumers to go to court. No? But courts are not really that adequate for cost issues, for time issues, for this kind of consumer disputes. But then our law changed, and we had we call it arbitration required. It's not mandatory because it still needs to be a consumer option. But if the consumer wants it to go to this kind of mechanism, the companies, the traders can't say no. So arbitration is required for consumer disputes concerning essential public services, light, water, communications, etc. And later, a few years after that, for all consumer disputes of low economic value below 5,000 euros. These kind of arbitration centers can have general jurisdiction for all consumer disputes. It's the case of most of those in that map over there, or some centers specialized in some kind of consumer issues. We had one of the centers for insurance disputes. We had another one, which now it's kind of low on activity, automobile sector, for travel agencies, etc. They can be national or regional. No? And this kind of consumer out-of-court ADR mechanisms also have the municipality support in their governing bodies, their premises, their administrative staff. Usually municipalities dynamize these kind of centers, and they financially support these arbitration centers. But here, from our 308 municipalities, only 118, 38% have this kind of ADR RAL hub. So if you look at the map of Portugal, all the area in green does not have an arbitration consumer center, all the area in green. So daltonic people, sorry, but it's in the other map, I think you can see better, all the area in white blue does not have an arbitration center. So big areas of Algarve, Lisbon, Porto, the north of Portugal, but the rest of the country does not. We have a compensation mechanisms because we have a national center, which is CNIAC, which has supplementary competence whenever there is no structure like that at a local or regional level. So CNIAC is competent to resolve consumer disputes in all those parts in green. The problem is the lack of proximity, because being the CNIAC National Center, it has no physical structures in those areas, and a lot of these dispute resolutions is made at distance. So for vulnerable consumer, this can be a factor of exclusion. But we have some good data. The Portuguese arbitration centers, our justice statistics say that the rate of cases filed has increased by 283% since they make the registry, and by 84% between 2003 and 2023. And also our monitoring report on alternative dispute resolution highlights the high satisfaction of users that use these kind of arbitration centers, and especially the users' loyalty, 8.31 out of 10. Users' loyalty is the probability to use the service again and recommend it to other consumers. So this is some good data to foster this kind of system all around the country. Challenges and opportunities for municipalities regarding this kind of consumer information and consumer dispute resolution mechanisms. One of the first aspects as challenging that I would like to highlight is the inequality in access to these services. As you saw in the maps, not all municipalities have information services or ADR mechanisms, leading to significant asymmetries around the country, which are particularly pronounced in remote or rural areas. And furthermore, these kind of services have a lot of differences in functioning, so also have some discrepancies in consumer rights protection around the country. Some of the centers are free, for instance, some others are not. All kind of the value, the maximum value of the consumer dispute is not the same for all the municipalities. So we have still some differences and still some asymmetries to work on. Also, low digital literacy, which is a challenge for most vulnerable consumers mainly. A lot of consumers don't even know they have these kind of services because a lot of information is online, is available online, and there are still a big frame of consumers which have difficulties accessing digital platforms, and also a lot of unclear information about all these kind of mechanisms. There are still a lot of consumers who don't know they have municipal resources for free that can help them resolving consumer issues, and so they always think, oh, it's no good to go to court, I won't have my problem solved, and they are unaware of this kind of mechanisms. And the information dispersion is not very good, of course. Also, the lack of resources in some municipalities. They have low resources and they have other priorities, so consumer issues keeps staying behind, and some lack of coordination. We have a lot of regulatory bodies in Portugal that connect directly or indirectly with consumer issues, and we have a lot of mechanisms to solve issues, because we have courts, we have peace courts, that can also resolve consumer conflicts, but they are only in some parts of the country. You have these kind of arbitration centers, in some cases presential, in other cases distance mechanisms. So there's a lack of coordination, and also each center, their territorial or geographic area of influence usually it's related with protocols between municipalities. So when I say I have an arbitration center in Porto, it's not only Porto. We have some cities around Porto which don't have protocol, and some cities further from Porto which have protocol. So there's some lack of coordination. It should be, and from my point of view, kind of multi-law system that consumers knew exactly where to address their issues, and then that platform or that institution could give them the different paths that they should address to resolve those kind of mechanisms. But there is room for improvement and also opportunities for municipalities to achieve this agenda locally. First of all, education and awareness raising. Education is the basis for everything, included consumer issues. So the municipalities, they play a strategic role here. They can develop educational campaigns for consumers at schools, or campaigns near the traders. So municipalities have this proximity aspect that is an opportunity for all of this. Also, technological innovation can be an opportunity. For instance, the use of artificial intelligence in ADR procedures to make them faster, to make them less complex, etc. The need to municipal transparency portals with information on consumer rights. And also there's a lot of room to foster partnerships, which is also one of the goals of this 2030 agenda. Partnerships between municipalities, arbitration centers, companies, other organizations, academia. So sometimes it looks like everyone is working these issues separately, and we should gain a lot working them together in partnership. I don't want to pass my time, but I would like to highlight some good local practices in Portugal, which I hope can serve as inspiration for other municipalities in my own country and in your countries as well, especially if you are involved in some kind of municipal structures. One of the first good practices I'd like to highlight is made here in Portugal, especially with one of our arbitration centers in Braga and Viana do Castelo, which is in the north of Portugal. It's about some campaigns for traders to join consumer arbitration centers. Now arbitration is required at the consumer option for some kind of conflicts, but this arbitration center in the north of Portugal has made a long work door to door with local traders, showing them the benefits to join a consumer arbitration center instead of going to court. Because for smaller traders, it's also very good, not only for consumers. So we are all in this together, and they have specific targeted campaigns for traders to join consumer arbitration centers. And then they use in the first image on the top, when they say, I'm a company that joined an arbitration center, so they can use it almost as a consumer trust badge. So this company has a positive attitude towards consumer conflicts and is willing to resolve them out of court. So it's kind of consumer trust badge. Also, the digital accessibility, some online portals, some consumer information apps. I would like to give the example of a municipality very near Porto, which is Gaia, which in their municipal portal, they have a space specific for consumer issues with non-legal information, let's say like that, with a kind of language that all consumers, all citizens can understand in a good way. That's also the example of Porto in there in one of the images. Also, a network in Portugal that it's working very well is the support network for consumers in debt, which in Portugal is called REIS. REIS is Rede de Apoio ao Consumidor Endividado, which is a support network for consumers in debt. Now the name is for banking clients, but the idea is really consumers in debt. For all those people that can't comply with their financial responsibilities to pay the house, to pay the car, to pay other kind of credits, consumer credits. And so there is a consumer support network with some consumer associations, some municipalities, etc. And municipalities here have a very important role because of the proximity to support these kind of networks where consumers can get support for free on how they can consolidate credits, payment plans, etc. So it's involving gradually a lot of municipalities and with a high success rate, hopefully getting better in the future. Also, some financial literacy and responsible consumption programs, for instance, especially in some times of the year, Christmas, high spending periods, Christmas, Black Friday, etc., to raise awareness of responsible consumption, consumer rights. Also, some campaigns that municipalities develop, and I would like to highlight an example near Lisbon, in Cascais, which they have a program designed for secondary school students about financial literacy for instance, which is a lack in gap in a lot of school programs. So how can we explain this kind of rights, this kind of consumption challenges to younger people, to elderly people? Now, there are a lot of municipalities developing campaigns now near the elderly populations as well. So these are good local practices that should be replicated around the country. And all these kind of sustainability issues are important too. So this kind of awareness that the resources of the world are finishing, so we need to save them and we need to work these things better. And also some consumer support in rural areas through mobile units and collaboration with local associations that can also make this bridge between these isolated consumers and all these kind of global or local organizations. So a mobile unit, as is done for libraries and so on, it's also, and health issues, also important for consumer issues. And I finish with a sentence that was said in the United Nations in 2015 when they approved the agenda, that our fight for global sustainability will be won or lost in the cities at a local level. So I'm free for all your questions now or after, if you want to send me as you wish. And I hope to have given you good ideas to think on and to investigate further. And I'm willing to share all this with you and to discuss all this with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Couto. Very interesting and a really important topic when it comes to that. We working in regions across Europe with trying to be non-capital regions, and that we have a devotion to the regional development, which is also the development of people in the regions and how they could function and work. And this is a very sustainable, important issue. So thank you very much for your presentation and highlighting this on a Portuguese level. And I think and hope there will be some thoughts or questions from the audience from other regions and cities or partners within the Alliance. So please, I'll open up the floor for any thoughts or questions to Professor Couto. Yes, Neila, please.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's quite interesting, and I truly believe that it's an important topic because, like you said, some people, they just don't want to go through all the hassle that they might have through courts or anything. And then what you explained is really a nice initiative. Municipalities taking the lead, and although you mentioned universities at some part in your presentation. But it was very brief. So how do you see the role of universities, higher educations, in this creating awareness and achieving this SDG alignment with this topic?
For instance, here in Portugal, some of these arbitration centers, they make protocols with different institutions, including universities. And also, some of them are considering to have, especially in that case of the areas that are not covered by any arbitration center, to have some kind of physical spaces for I don't remember the name in English, sorry, to attend consumers in universities. Open to communities, really integrated with municipalities. It's an opportunity. Also, for instance, those kind of portals, apps for consumer information, they could be included in projects in universities, for instance. I was in a project once about some kind of these issues to develop an app, because sometimes For instance, municipalities don't have those kind of resources, but with a partnership with an university, and it's also important for consumers to have projects. We had 2 projects last year here with our multimedia students at our university. In one of those projects, they developed some materials of consumer information to development campaigns in schools, little kids, with graphic cards, playing cards, with how to talk about consumer issues in a simpler language. And also they are developing an consumer app where consumers, for instance, I bought a fridge, I bought a computer. In this date, I can insert this data to see when the warranty ends, what can I do, some consumer questions more, and this is being made by students at universities. So I think there is a lot, especially when universities and municipalities work together. I think there's a lot of room to joint initiatives and interesting initiatives. Because sometimes in academia, we have our research stays in conference, in publications, and consumer is all about day-to-day, the basics. So I think municipalities can help to bridge that gap sometimes, I think, also. And it's important to this kind of academia in action in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments to Professor Couto? If not, I would say that I think this is very much in line with what the thematic group of inclusion and social justice, not least that it's in many ways are for those less fortunate, that people with vulnerabilities and having disabilities or less privileged people are. So are there any thoughts about actually forming a group or doing some initiative when it comes to this topic of trying to share knowledge or try to develop the questions that you raised?
We have two recent proposals that we presented in the TIG of inclusion of social justice about two BIPs. One for students, which is Digital Consumer Lab. If any partner wants to join or wants more information, I can provide after. Digital Consumer Lab about rights, risks, and regulations, because the digital world, even for younger people, it's still a lot of unknown areas. They use it a lot, social media and games, but they don't really know how to process information they get online. So how can we make all these kind of digital environment and consumer challenges in a hand-on-hands approach? So, for instance, terms and conditions online, protection of personal data. How can we understand these concepts in action? We have a proposal of a BIP for students on that, and also a proposal of a BIP for staff on SDGs, not specifically SDG 16, all SDGs, and local action. So I think it's going. How can we integrate these thematics of local intervention and SDGs in our research, in our classes, etc. So we have these two proposals. If anyone wants more information, I can share.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Couto. So
and we are open to partner with other initiatives that you have in these thematics, of course.
Yeah, great. Nice to hear. So there will be development and further actions in this, which is very good to hear. Okay. If there are no further questions, I would like to thank you for participating, but not least, Professor Couto, for your very interesting and thoughtful and nice presentation on the subject, and something that we'll try to work together on and develop within the Alliance and those of us interested in the area. So thank you all, and not least, again, Professor Couto, for today.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.